Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. My name's Corey Webb, and I'm the Director of Partnerships here at ChurnZero. And I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Revenue Tag Team: How CROs and CCOs Can Crush Expansion Without Crushing Each Other. Please introduce to you our speakers today. We have Sabina Pons, who is the CEO of Growth Molecules, which is an award-winning advisory and technology services firm specializing in customer lifecycle solutions. She is also a fractional CCO at Helix, which is a leader in pre-sales strategy, sales enablement, and revenue operations. And we're also joined by Jeramee Waldum, who is a partner and fractional CRO at Helix as well. So together, these two colleagues will be bringing the perspective from each side, the CCO and CRO side, and we'll be sharing some real life experiences on this topic today. So I'm excited. And with that, I'll let you guys get things started.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. That was a
Yeah.
wonderful welcome. We're glad to be here today. It's a topic near and dear to our hearts, as Jeramee and I have not only had the pleasure of working together now, but we worked together also almost 10 years ago now, and for a good 5 years thereafter. And with that, we are going to bring some of our key learnings to you that are relevant not only to, of course, what we experienced, but where the market is today and how we want to empower you with some tools and tips. We're going to go through the general overview, right, of what we see typically with this concept of a revenue gap. We believe and we've seen companies leave money on the table. So we're going to talk about the reality check. What does that mean? Why is that painful? And we're going to get into what teams can do about it, how we can look at expansion opportunities, and that it's really got to be teams working closely together and avoiding friction. We'll give some practical key tips in that CRO CCO playbook approach, how we work well together, how we get our teams to work well together. We'll talk about the tools, the tech, and the tension busters to make that happen. And then we'll make sure that we leave plenty of time for Q&A. As Corey mentioned, that chat is open. By all means, raise it up along the way. If we can clarify a point or revisit something or answer a question that you have swirling in your mind and you can't wait till the end, don't feel like you have to wait, bring it up. Before we go in and talk a little bit more, we would love to get a quick audience poll. This helps us learn about you and gives us some context for the way that we will create our narrative today. You should see a poll now. There's 3 key questions, and we want to understand where you are at today in your post-sales to pre-sales handoff.
Seeing responses come in. I'll give it just a few more seconds to let people respond.
Okay. Yep, still coming in.
All right, it's slowing down a little bit. I might go ahead and close the poll and share the results out.
Okay. All right. So overwhelming majority, 65% are reporting that your post-sales to pre-sales handoff is clunky but effective. The next highest is a trust fall. And we've got synchronized and scalable. So 10% feel like they're doing it really well. And kudos to you. Congrats. That's awesome. It's hard to do. And even when you get it nailed down, then it kind of has to change and evolve and iterate over time as business changes, customer needs change, and that's okay. So we're going to go in a little bit more here and talk about a little bit about our backgrounds for a second and who we are to give context for why we're the best people today to help you navigate this. Jeramee, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. It's a pleasure to be on here. Quick little background on myself. So I was one of the first people in at MavenLink, first salesperson, and helped build out the new business sales organization. Ended up spending 8.5 years at MavenLink, now Cantata. And so I got to see the whole evolution from doing new business to that first point of, oh no, we have people up for renewal, nobody's talking to them, to flash forward, getting the pleasure to meet Sabina for the first time at MavenLink, and having her come in and like totally revamp everything that we were doing and bring structure and process to everything. So seen a pretty cool evolution. After that, went on to Tackle, led the sales and success team at Tackle, helping ISVs partner with AWS, Microsoft, and Google. So worked with the whole range, awesome companies, awesome team. And that was really where kind of got the introduction into a lot of the AI tools and different techniques to help automate a lot of things, help build cohesion across sales and success. And I learned everything from Sabina, so it's awesome that we are now working together again. So Helix now, Helix, we built out a team. We're about 30 full-time people now, in a large contractor network as well. We do all things go to market. So we initially, when we started it, we were helping companies with marketing, sales, operations, rev ops, building out partner channels. Um, and we had this gap of customer success. And so we brought Growth Molecules and Helix together. So it's awesome to get to work with Sabina again.
The honor is all mine, Jeremy. So as he mentioned, I came in, I'm this new whippersnapper coming in at Maven Link in 2016, and I started in June, and became really apparent that one, I wasn't sure about Jeremy, if like I needed to be like his ally, if I wanted to be his friend, or if it was like stay away from him with a 10-foot pole. But quickly I learned he's a good guy and he knows his stuff and he's really good at leading teams. So I, suggested, hey, let's get a one-on-one on the books, and we started meeting weekly. And by August of that year, it became apparent. So just, 3 months later, it became apparent that our teams were not working well together. We literally were physically all in an office at the time, and we had this kitchen in between us. And, I affectionately call it the Great Divide, because his team was on one side and mine was on the other. And that became almost symbolic of the gap in partnership that came. And when an AE would come over to my side of the building, my team would like literally get tense. And I think that, if one of my team members walked over there, they probably anticipated complaining about something. And so that wasn't cool. We got our team in August together, our first offsite with just sales and customer success, and we really got to know each other, understand a day in the life, like what really is the challenge. You ask, customer success managers, well, what does it really mean to be in sales? Like, oh, well, they just come in on Monday mornings and do expense reports and see if some numbers, stick in terms of forecast. Well, it is so far from the truth. Right now in my role, and for the last 5 years since Growth Molecules has been around, I do business development. I am in sales conversations. And even as a leader at Mavenlink, I was in sales conversations helping to drive renewals and expansions as we owned those particular numbers. So it's been an awesome experience, and I'm glad that we get to do that together and help customers today, because we are practitioners first and foremost, which means we've been in your shoes, we get it, understand the pressures of board, understand getting your teams to think differently. Sales is not a dirty word. In fact, without robust processes to understand customers in the first place, to get them to sign on the dotted line, then we have to understand, how to grow that value and so on. Without the good sales expertise and tactics, we don't have a business. So there's also some job security in that key piece for CSMs and post-sales teams as well. So in terms of this concept of the reality gap, right, when we're talking about that, what does that really mean? And this revenue gap comes when teams aren't working together. And we know that when they're focused collectively on NRR, right, net renewal rate or net dollar renewal rate, this, of course, is of the dollars that are due to renew, how many did you keep? How many did you add in net new dollars, whether that be from net new sales and new logos that you've captured, or whether that be current customers buying more. And then you're also factoring in churn. So taking that holistic calculation, that ultimately is your NRR, right? Best in class NRR. If you look at Atlassian, they're about 130. You look at, I guess that's Jira's Atlassian. But if you look at these other well-known companies, if we can work together to get teams to 115, 120, that is really great. The way that we can do that, though, is by, working together. And we know that when those teams are working together, on average, they'll see 21% higher. Transparently, when I got to Mavenlink in 2016, our net renewal rate, we were just around 100. And we had, like what everybody talks about, that leaky bucket and that opportunity to make sure we're getting the right customers, right product market fit, and that we're setting expectations properly with them in the pre-sales process, and we're delivering on those expectations. There's common theme and thought around sales as the promise makers, and professional services and support and customer success were the promise keepers. But if we don't know what that promise was, or we don't understand the vision behind it, or from a customer ROI perspective, like what actual improvements they want to see. So for us with Mavenlink, it's a professional services automation now called Cantata. We would have customers who wanted to increase things like billable utilization of their consultants. They want to have better project margins. So if we captured where it was at then and we could look at where it needed to be, they are much more likely to add us into another division of their business, add us into or buy more features and modules within our business. So if we can get that right up front, there's a lot of opportunity to grow net renewal rate with the business. When we think about then what are the hurdles? Like obviously it's no brainer. If you can put 21% more up on the scoreboard, like why wouldn't you? Well, it's hard. It's challenging. And some of the common challenge that we see are scenarios around like mismatched handoffs. So either the economic buyer, the person that was in the room with the salesperson doing all the discovery, figuring out what they needed, isn't the same. That's now part of the implementation team and using the software at the end of the day. What that comes down to is it's not even a mismatched expectations between a sales team and a customer success team. It's a challenge between the client not talking internally. And we see that also. That's a contributing factor. But the more common contributing factor that I personally experienced and Jeramee and I did together when we were working together was just this idea that the AE didn't communicate with the CSM and didn't share some of the key things. And so then the CSM is asking all the same questions again. Well, why did you buy and what's important to you? Who's going to be on the project team? Do you have a big milestone upcoming, like a board meeting that you're going to need to show value in? And teams would complain about that and just kind of feel frustrated with each other. So I just I need to know more and thinking about systems and tools. How do we make that happen and how do we enable that? Some other things that come up regularly, Jeramee will touch on and share from his perspective what he's seen on his side.
Yeah, so there's a common. So I don't want this to be like we were perfect all the time, because there was definitely multiple points of like, wait, what? Wait, what's going on here? As Sabina mentioned, that darn kitchen did have an initial divide. But one of the things that does make this so challenging is even just the ownership of certain numbers and KPIs. One thing that we always struggled with, renewals was always really clear until we got an enterprise team and we had enterprise AEs that technically their comp plans they were in charge of new business renewals and expansions. Well, this Sabina's team was also in charge of renewals and expansions. So it's like, okay, who owns it? And we had to spend a lot of time building out. We built a RACI model. We had to build it by segment. But one of the things that sometimes was a challenge was specifically the expansion number. So there were times I would roll up reports and I would have where my team was involved in expansion, and Sabina would roll up an expansion number, and our CEO and CFO would be like, what is going on? Like the numbers don't tick and tie. And so I think, spending the time to just get really clear on who owns it, how we're reporting on it, how we're rolling it up. That was a huge turning point for us at Mavenlink. If you want to go to the next one, kind of double tapping on expansions. Um, there, I can't even count the number of times I heard one of the AEs come to me, they would come to me first. Why? I just listened to a call and I heard the CSM talking about, the expansion. Like, I thought I owned the expansion. That's one of my hold accounts. And so we created a really good process also with this around making sure things didn't escalate to Sabina first or to me first. It was like, go over there and talk, like kind of like break down that barrier of that tension of, oh no, an AE's over on the CSM side, what's going on? Um, and one thing that was really cool that a lot of the AEs did with their CSMs and that we really encouraged was like, just go have that regular one-on-one, like make sure it's not a CSM only happy hour or an AE only happy hour, like build those relationships up so that there isn't this tension point of like, who owns this? Like, that's my number, like stay away, and create that good cohesion.
I love that. I remember we did, I think it was even that first August offsite, we tried to map out pods of people. And we had, I think it was BDR, AE, CSM, and sometimes like we'd bring in the SE, solutions consultant. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I'll get into some of the impacts of that on the next one.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, as far as the business impacts, I want to hear more about this, Jeramee, because I have my thoughts. I know you have yours as well.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe just pop both of them up.
Sure.
So as Sabina mentioned earlier, like it's no secret how big of an impact this can have on the organization. Upwards of 10% of ARR, there's different report, 10 to 20%, is basically kind of depending on what stat you're looking at. But the one that always stands out to me on here, and this was something that I didn't necessarily believe in until we got a lot of this process and we got a lot of this cohesion in place, was the 38% higher win rates. One thing that Sabina mentioned when we created these pods of BDR, AE, CSM, and it was not perfect 100% of the time. There was always outside use cases where it wasn't necessarily that AE and that CSM working together on 100% of those opportunities because it's harder to change the CSM. So there was always a little bit of an overlap. It was usually like an AE would be 90% working with the CSM. Maybe there was a couple edge cases. But what got really cool about those pods was when the AEs started bringing the CSMs in during the pre-sales process, making that introduction. It helped on the handoff. It helped on the like getting somebody up to speed, knowing personalities, knowing what value are they looking to receive, any sort of deadlines. And so we definitely saw the increase in win rates when we looked, and felt right from the pre-sales process all the way through renewal and expansion, we were working as one team. And it didn't feel like, oh, I just got handed off. Now I got to meet this whole new person and do all these things. So I can personally attest to, I did not think the 30% win rate was going to come, and I think at Maven like we may have even been higher because of that just true like team effort that we brought to it.
And the other piece too is references, right? Referenceable customers. Like when the AE and BDR have an appreciation for what's working and what's not working from the install base, then they're also going to sell better. And then it's also a win-win because now they have more familiarity with those great use cases. And then they can ask those CSMs like, hey, I think this customer would be a great reference. Can you help me make an introduction to this prospective customer? And there's nothing more powerful than that. Any software acquisition or software selection and purchase that I've done as a leader, I've always wanted to talk to other people that are using it, right? Like when I bought Gainsight for the first time, like what's the main thing? When I bought, ChurnZero down the line, like what are the main things that I need to know to be successful with this application and what do I need to do to accelerate that, et cetera. So I think that sales can lean on customer success that way when they have that mutual respect and rapport.
Okay, so team sport. Trying to have some fun here, and please feel free if you want to use chat throughout this. We don't have to wait till the end. So team sport, I would say when Sabina first started, our team sport looked a lot like this. There was a bit of a tug of war. Um, I technically at the time was owning new business renewals and expansion. Uh, had no problem you know, giving up the responsibility of that. But there was definitely that tension. And this, our team sport looked like AEs and CSMs trying to fight for every dollar. As we all know, a lot of AEs are just trying to maximize their comp. They're looking at, how do I just sell more and get more up on the board? So there was this kind of tension that this is what our team sport initially looked like. Then I would say next iteration, it looked a bit more like, if you want to go to the next one, it looked a bit more like a marathon race where it was like a true handoff. It was kind of like, okay, if I'm just focused on new business, I'm just going to hand this baton and let them take it and kind of be out of the deal. Um, this is what a lot of organizations look like. Like we even use it in some of the verbiage when we talk about a handoff and some AEs will say, throw it over the fence. Like I just focus on new business. Um, that's not the team sport you're looking for. What you're looking for is more of a, working in harmony, working together. This next slide is not Sabina and I. We'll just practice that. Um, but this is by the time we left, this is truly what it felt like. This is what it was. This is not just the executive team feeling like we're working in unison. This again, that pod concept from BDR to AE and CSM, all working together, all staying involved, even to the point where our BDRs were not necessarily compensated on um, post sales, so existing customer expansions. We did do some spiffs and some things like that, but our BDRs had no problem because they were working together. It was a true team to help a CSM. Hey, help me get wider in this account, or this person just left. I need to get to this person. And so, again, just working in harmony and creating that cohesion together.
I see two questions that have come into chat, so thank you for that. And I think someone else raised their hand as well, so we'll get to that in a few. So Christine LaFrance, she said, what stage of company and team size were you at this time? I believe when I joined, we were around 14 million, and when I left, right around 100 million. When I got there, my team was 4 people, and over the years, with a lot of these scenarios Jeramee and I are talking about, it quickly got to 10, 20. Across all post sales, my team was about 100. Jeramee's team, what were you at the time? Jeramee was pretty substantial because we're global as well.
Probably around there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Offices in um, three in the US, London, Australia. Uh,
hmm
you had support in Cebu as well. So yeah, large global team once we.
hmm and then the second question from Jacob Rose wants to know about the makeup of the pods. How do we define attributes? How are they segmented? And what degree are non-quantifiable inputs, like personalities of the individuals, used? You want to take that one, Jeramee? I can add on if I need to.
Yeah, yeah. So this was it was not it was all those factors we did kind of bake into it. This was initially we worked through with our RevOps team to initially pull all data. We did we kind of had conflicting segmentation in the beginning. So the way we segmented on the new business side was different than necessary, like the support team that was going to be needed for implementation. And so we worked together to get those matched up as best as possible. So we had territories, we had industry segmentation, we had obviously the size and we went off of employees. Um, but yeah, and then we did factor in personalities. It was like, I don't know if those two are going to work really well together. And so it was this um, kind of tug and pull to get through it. And we also did not ever put ourselves in a spot where it was like, okay, we're just going to set that and we'll revisit it again next year. We were evaluating that consistently, not making changes and chasing every squirrel like, oh, they had a conflict, let's change them out. But we at least every 6 months when we were doing our kind of mid-year get together, if there were changes that needed to be made, maybe an AE got promoted, things like that. But very data driven, and then personalities and all the other factors layered onto it.
Yeah. And then we had the other question, the follow on was around customer success manager, solutions engineer, and then BDR. Those were the three
Hmm.
core that we typically had. Then there were times where we would bring in other people, yeah, marketing resources. If we were going to do any advocacy campaign or a case study with a particular customer, ad hoc as is needed, we'd bring in other resources. But those were the key core people, and we set expectations for how often they should meet. We even gave them checklist of things they should be talking about. And then all along the way, of course, Jeramee and I were meeting each week, sharing what's working, what's not working, and how we could be doing better. And then making sure that we had all hands meetings where we were highlighting really cool wins that provided positive reinforcement for how teams are doing it well and how it can work.
I would add too, we did also have advisory services folks
Yes,
as
that's right.
well that were industry specific. So if we were, say, selling into marketing agencies, we had a specific marketing agency advisory resource that led a lot of assessments. They were a great resource for us that had cohesion across. So like they were even involved in some billable delivery work.
hmm
So them and the SE were quite frankly the two that were probably had the most involvement on kind of pre-sale and post-sale.
hmm So we've talked a lot about, our real life experiences and challenges and struggles that we had and how we worked against it, right? The compensation was a really big one, making sure that the comp plans were driving the intended behaviors, that they were complementary. Jeremy mentioned some spiffs. But the other key piece, right, is that's great, but what does that all drive? What are the other opportunities there besides just case studies and other wins? And it's that going back to that revenue number. And when we're looking at expansion opportunity types, there's kind of three key things that we typically think about. There are more, but from a kind of low-hanging fruit commercial perspective, if you think about like product-led growth, when you're having your ear to the ground, so to speak, you're looking for signals that are going to help prime the scenario to drive more revenue with a customer. It could be because they're maybe a platform-based pricing model, and you start to see usage increase, right? You start to see opportunities there for these certain nudges, so to speak, as they say, to get some more growth there. When we look at upsell and cross-sell queues, right? There's opportunities there to get customers to not only be more sticky and have adopted more, but there could be things that they say, oh, well, we're acquiring a new company. They might say, we have a new division that is thinking about also launching this product, right? They've seen the success and the return on our investment in buying this software product, and now this other group wants to use it too. It could be, we now are taking on a new type of business industry, and we might be interested in another one of your product suites and features. So those are some of the types of things that will typically come up. And then when you're looking at, the term, I think everybody now knows it, multi-threading, right? Having multiple connection points on the different the multiple connection points on the customer side, so that you're not only speaking to a super user or your power users, you're also speaking to the economic buyer, maybe a couple other key leaders across the business, and nurturing those relationships. So there's an opportunity to always be asking, can I be introduced to the leader that oversees, this region in your business? That's where that pre-sales and post-sales team come together really work. Because usually in the pre-sales process, you're going to have multiple stakeholders making a decision, especially if it's enterprise software, right? That's a big commitment financially. And you're going to have maybe depending on your makeup, let's use, Maven Link, for example, you'd have the head of professional services. They might roll into the chief customer officer, maybe even the CRO or even a COO. At some point, sometimes a CFO wants to join if it's a large global organization. So we have to be thoughtful about that and keeping those relationships going post-sale. So that way you're, as a CSM, engaging with those different stakeholders to make sure they're aware of not only the value that your software is bringing to them, but also the ROI, right? So the value is like the feeling behind it, and the ROI is the pure play quantitative calculation, and both are important. So those are ways that if teams are working together, they can foster those multi-threaded relationships and expand those relationships. When we look at customer lifecycle journeys, and that's one thing Jeramee and I now get to do together all day, every day. And we've both, since we worked together years ago, had taken, quote unquote, time apart working on different things and learning new skills. So he then oversaw customer success as part of his remit and CRO at Tackle. I went in and helped learn how to build a business and growth molecules and how to do business development and how to do marketing and how to make sure the pre-sale and post-sale motion is swift and clean. And so now we get to say, I've walked in your shoes. I understand what that's like. And holy moly, let's make this better for our customers, because the challenges are out there. We have customers that are 6.8 billion in revenue. We've got customers that are 2 million in revenue. It's about the problem to solve and not necessarily their size. So we get to think about all these different touch points along a journey, and companies might own them differently. They might think about these moments that matter and say, you know what, for this segment, for our digital touch segment, AI is going to do this. If it identifies a signal, it's going to route to this CSM or to this AE or account manager, and we'll action off of it this way. For this play, on this scenario, for it's our enterprise, it's one of our top 15, whale account type things. What is the experience you want to provide, and who is the owner, and what signals should they be looking for? So that shared context is so, so, so important. And everybody's journey looks a little bit different, but the concept is that full life cycle from software selection, of course, to implementation, onboarding, adoption, fine tuning. And when you're getting into those stages, that's when they're seeing that ROI and that value. And that's when you can ask for a case study. You can ask for, will you serve as a reference? Is there somebody else in your network that you could potentially refer us to? All those types of things come together. And of course, when we're looking at customer life cycles, we know it's not linear. It's kind of sometimes like this. And then we also know that it shouldn't have an end. If we're doing it really well, whether you're a managed service, whether it's recurring revenue software, that loop is coming back around, and they might be buying more, and then you're going to onboard and implement that. So it's a healthy dialogue, but the only way we can do that effectively for our end customers in B2B and B2B2C is having shared context among the team, which gets into our next piece here on the concept of playbooks and that alignment and actually showing you how we can do it in action.
Yeah, so what I want to just touch on one thing there that you said, Savita. We both have, it was kind of cool for us both to go see, the other side and live in the other person's shoes. I will gladly go on the record and say success is a heck of a lot harder than new business sales. Uh,
Wow,
and
I've
being
never heard
someone
this.
that is doing delivery myself and doing success, doing and managing it at Tackle and now living in it, every day myself as well. It's a lot harder. So I've gotten a whole new appreciation post Maven for all the things that success teams go through. I don't even know if I
He's
should.
sucking up to his audience. He knows his audience
No,
is
no,
customer
no.
success and ChurnZero family of people. But I'll give you kudos too. I've never heard Jeremy say that, so I'm glad this is recorded. I'm gonna play it back for some people. I actually saw that one of our former team members is on the call, Brian Bishop. If you're still out there, kudos to you. But then also, I'll say the reverse is true too, right? So as I've had to think about those commercial conversations and doing negotiations in a way where it's not an existing customer that they already know you and they already understand the art of possible with your product or service. I'm meeting new people for the first time and I'm trying to convince them that we walk the walk. We know what we're doing for a living. We have lots of customers who I can introduce you to who are happy with what we've helped them accomplish. But it's also very, very hard. So I think it's just where we originated in our careers and how they've morphed. And so I think it's just as hard on sales as success, which is why we can make it easier on each other.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, there's also the shift that's just taking place right now with, we're seeing a lot more in the clients we work with where historically a CRO just owned new business. And now it's, owning everything, and kind of everything reporting up into the CRO. And now it's until you live in the shoes, it's hard to fully appreciate how hard it is and what you go through. And escalations and all the not so fun stuff. There's very few escalations on the new business side. Some of the just kind of like anchoring back on some of the like playbooks and things that um, we did and just recommend just building into your cadence. The shared goals, again, we've kind of touched on this, but when Sabina and I would meet each week, it was going through customers, it was going through numbers, it was Sabina's going to share an example of an enterprise forecast being very, very bad and her coming in and saving the day. And that's really like what you want to do. Like it's not like, oh, I own the new business number and Sabina owns renewals and expansion. It was both of us working together. Like, okay, what can I do to help you on the new business side? What can my team do to go unlock, some expansions, get wider in an account? Okay, let's go put our BDR team into existing customers. And so we really truly had shared goals. It was never, I hit my number, you didn't hit yours. It was how do we go hit the overall company number and each hit together. The shared customers, um, references and referrals. I owe everybody. Well, yeah, well, I always get those mixed up. We had some fun with that during our first offsite where we were just going through like, okay, how do we go drive references and referrals and having those shared customers, knowing the story, being able to tell that story from pre-sale, post-sale, expansion, renewal, um, highlighting those wins across the board, highlighting all the renewals. Sabina's team hitting the gong on a renewal, like and or the AE and the CSM hitting it together on a big expansion. So really cool process around just sharing those wins, but also um, those shared customers, like bringing them on to, one of your internal meetings, having them come on and speak about how they worked and being able to highlight the AE they worked with and the CSM and the SE and the advisory resource and the executive team members they met and talk real world. I'd say it fits underneath that shared customer of knowing the complete customer journey. And the shared language, a couple of different things on this. One thing that was fun in the beginning of really building out this partnership was even just internal education on how we talk about certain metrics, how we talk about um, things that we're doing, how we're implementing things like that. I mean, heck, I think half of my AEs didn't even know what NRR was. So we had to do a whole education process on like, no, this is what it is, and this is why it's important. This is how we increase it. So
Good call out there. I was going to add, in terms of the shared goal, something else even between you and me on a leadership perspective, when we were doing high level forecasting, but also planning out our budgets and what we're going to go ask for, so to speak, for, the next quarter or for the next year, and, what tools and resources. I know your team bought 6sense, and you were using it to help with, sales pipeline development and things like that. And I went over to you and was like, hey, I'm kind of interested. How does this work? What can we do? Is this something that customer success can use for renewals? And so we got in touch with the 6sense CSM that we were working with, and I asked the question, said, we've never had a use case like this where customer success has used the application 6sense, and let's pilot it. So we got a couple people licensed on my side, and we were able to use it as early warning, meaning if they were looking up, financial for Certinia, or they're looking at Harvest or at Smartsheet, something else, we would get a little ping that somebody from that domain was researching competitors, knowing that they already had Maven Link and that their renewal is going to be coming up with like the next 6 months. So it was really cool to share those types of things and talk about where we were going as a leadership for our strategies. And that for me was really helpful, and really helped us, I think, move the needle too. So one of the ways that you could think about how to establish plays is those scenarios, and being really prescriptive about like what are the 5 most common scenarios that your company is encountering that you believe would help improve the leaving money on the table, right? Said differently, how could we potentially think about a campaign for expansion? And in that scenario, right, there could be a customer usage spike. Maybe you have, Amplitude or Mixpanel or an application out there that's showing you your customer usage behavior in their application, and you see this spike. You have an early warning signal. You have it configured in ChurnZero. Then you're able to action off of it. And so what a CSM could be doing, or the system would automatically trigger, is a behavior that says, oh, this is an opportunity, whether it's a literal system trigger that then notifies, the AE side, or if it's literally an action where they say, hey, at a meeting, in my weekly pod meeting, I saw this, and this customer had this usage spike. This is something we can go look into. Why are they using it more? What other opportunities are there? And so, sales might get that meeting going. We'll have that strategy session. And then there's a joint motion that's established. You're going to own this. I'm going to do this. What does that follow-up look like? And maybe it actually turns into a legitimate, opportunity or HubSpot deal for expansion. So getting really specific and bespoke about what those motions look like, what are common steps teams should take, and revisiting it often. So creating a culture of coaching where your managers, your sales managers, your customer success managers, that they know what a best in class process here looks like, and that they're holding their teams accountable, and that they're revisiting it. And in a previous picture here, actually in this back slide here, this other gentleman with me and Jeramee is Chris Scalia. He was one of our former bosses at one point and good friend of ours. And he had said to us, inspect what you expect. And so as leaders, if you're not holding your team accountable to these plays and these motions and these expectations, that's a problem. But even more so, the psychology behind it, if you're not bringing it up to them regularly and spotlighting cool ones that happened when you're in a team meeting and say, hey, John and Heather handled this scenario for expansion really, really well. It started back in February. It was slow to go, but guess what? By end of June, they closed this deal. It added 50K more in revenue. Awesome work. Great job. And so that's pretty cool. We had a question here. Let's see. By opportunity flag, do you mean open a new opportunity in Salesforce? How do you recommend tracking CSM generated leads? Lots of different ways to tackle this. I did literally mean an opportunity in Salesforce, or a deal is what they call it in HubSpot. May not quite be at a stage of maturity, whether the company or that opportunity, that expansion motion may not have the stage of maturity that is ready to actually log an opportunity in Salesforce or your CRM. But it could result in something that happens in your customer success platform. And so that goes into like how you're tracking CSM generated leads. We typically will call those CSQLs, right? Customer success qualified leads. So it's not just somebody coming in from the website. It's not just email that was opened from a marketing campaign. It's somebody that is an existing customer that you know them, they know you, they know what value your product and services are bringing. And it sounds like there's a need here. It could be that you're seeing this usage and you know what their usage patterns are because of your tools, because of your AI and telemetry data, creating awareness around those. So then the CS can actually capture that in your system of records as something that you logged, as something that your CSM has logged. So there's a lot of different ways to architect it from a revenue operations and a CS operations perspective. But ideally, you're having tools to do this. It's not literally a spreadsheet. If you're a smaller company and you don't have the budget for those tools, you don't even have an operations team, a revenue operations team, start with a spreadsheet. Literally have it go on a spreadsheet, put the name, put the information, and have a process that you run internally where you're communicating that. And then the Jeramees and the Sabinas of the world are reviewing it together, and then you can talk about some kind of a cool program to incentivize behaviors to stick to that along the way.
Yeah, I'll add too. We did at Tackle. We were one of the first things did when joined there. We got ChurnZero and we implemented it, and we built out a really cool health score within each account, and then also being able to see. We were using Salesforce and ChurnZero, but we then were able to see what accounts have high health score without expansion opportunities added to them. And that was like the quick, easy. For us at Tackle, it was, again, we were helping companies get listed and transact on AWS, Microsoft, and Google. So if there was the initial deal was AWS, first thing we would do is, okay, let's go validate why not at the Microsoft and Google marketplaces. And so it was pretty cool. And we end up creating a whole process around creating those new opportunities because sometimes those can get lost in the renewal opportunity. And so if you're just like product lines and things like that, I'm a big fan of getting products and building out the process and doing all of those things early. It'll save you a lot of headaches, and it'll ultimately increase your expansions when you get really good at that, just kind of back end piece of creating the opportunities or the deals if you're using HubSpot in advance, being able to track those and not creating the expansion opportunity with a 1 day close, sales cycle. And uh, we not to say we're perfect and we've never done that, but there's that's usually the best indicator that you know what's going on. If your sales cycle is sub 5 days on expansions, you probably got some work to do.
And you touched on the renewal piece too. Like, it is, just to be clear, you can have an expansion on a renewal, and you should have an expansion on a renewal as much as you possibly can. And those teams can work together. And in those scenarios where that pod of sales and post-sales teams are working together along the way, and say it does culminate in that expansion on the renewal rather than as a standalone, that's when leaders have to say, this is a really cool exception. We want to drive more of that behavior. And does it literally meet the bounds of the comp plan that said expansions are treated this way and renewals are treated this way? If the spirit of the motion was to build more business on the account, like that's an opportunity to say, okay, there's some exceptions, and this one we're going to take us as a one-off, and we're going to work together and figure out what the proper comp is on this to make sure that our teams do that. Because from a customer-centric perspective, right, customer experience, it's easier for them to have one contract ticket to go sign. It's easier for billing. It's easier from the whole administration of the commercials to have those things be together. And on the flip side, what we see, and I even see this with some of the software that I subscribe to, that I pay for, is where if you have what we would call a user expansion, right? You're adding on more users along the way. So it's not at the beginning of the contract, and it's not at the end, and it's not a large expansion where you're adding, 50 more users, or it's not a new platform threshold if you're a consumption model. But there's some changes along the way, onesie, twosies, things like that. Having the mechanism to charge for that in real time, so to speak, rather than waiting till the renewal, is also pretty critical too. And that's a whole other thing. But a lot of clients that I've worked with surprisingly don't prorate that charge. If it's a 2-year contract and they're added at the end of year 1, they should be charged for that next 12 months. Don't wait till the renewal to start to then true all that up and then charge them backwards. That's also a bad customer experience. So there's a lot of, these are all RevOps, very centric things, a little bit of a tangent, but things that I'm kind of passionate about and I've seen go the wrong way. And that's also leaving money on the table. To that point, what are some of the metrics that work, some of the things that we see to keep it quantitative? Like, a lot of feelings get involved, especially if you're working with more junior people coming out of college or a couple of years in the workforce as their first CSM job, or maybe they're early into their BDR or AE life. Sometimes those emotions can run high and they get frustrated because they're working so hard. They want to see the glory. Well, the best way we can drain the emotion is keep it focused on, the numbers and empowering them with the skills that they need to be successful. So the one of the most, basic ones here that we can collectively be focused on is thinking about, expansions. We talked about NRRs, we talked about how fast we can get those expansions. But Jeramee, I'll let you share a little bit about it from your perspective.
Yeah, let me hit on a few questions here because I think this kind of goes along with this. Could you speak in more detail about the variable comp structure that you found best motivated A's and CSMs toward shared goals around expansions? So, um, we tried. I'll use maybe gosh, everywhere I've been, we're always tinkering with this a bit. I don't think there's any silver bullet. I think you really gotta get in there and figure out what works for your organization. And then this isn't a set it and forget it. Like, oh, that works right now. This is going to work forever. I would say the thing that worked the best that I would put on in my mind would be we created specifically around expansions. Enterprise was pretty clear that it was just we were going to basically kind of double comp. We created comp structures where there wasn't any conflict. 100% of expansions were paid to both AE and CSM, and we just worked the comp structure on the back end so it made sense for the business. Um, for the other teams, we created a pretty cool process where it literally took Sabina and I's approval for AE to get compensated on that. And the reason behind that was it was essentially prove to me that you're involved with this, prove to me that CSM didn't just go close a big expansion and AE's, sees it on a win report and wants credit for it and wants to be compensated. So it really helped create that cohesion of working together. It made sure the AE stayed involved. If nothing else, it was a kind of CYA. I got to prove that I was involved with this. But then naturally, like you force that kind of enough times, they're going to see the benefit of it. They get to see the referrals that come from it. They get to use that customer as a reference. They don't have to go ask the CSM for, hey, get me an advertising agency that's more than 500 people in New York. Like, oh, wait, I'm working. I just had a call with that person, that's a happy customer. So, I don't know, Sabine, if you want to add anything on the comp piece there, but it's a forever battle. There's no way around it.
Yeah, no, we tried all kinds of different things and iterated. We took feedback from the team too, what was working. And then of course at the end of the year you start to look at attainment. Like, did people actually feel incentivized? Did they actually hit their goals and targets? Did it make sense?
Yeah, and Ben, I saw the CYA process. Yeah, I would agree. Like that's not a scale that doesn't scale. It was the nice thing about it was the forcing factor for getting the two teams to really work together. And then we knew, like Sabina, this is where Sabina and I would talk about this all the time in our weekly one-on-one. Like we would know if an AE's involved, if they're proactive, if they're working well together. So there were definitely times where we made calls where maybe the AE didn't love it. But it was clear, they were after a certain period of time, like they were kind of playing that CYA. Like I'm just trying to join a call with my video off and say I was on the call. Like that didn't get you credit. So we really reinforce that.
And as
Uh,
leaders, we were really transparent too. And I think that kind of stemmed down from, our CEO and everyone else. We were really transparent about our business numbers, where we were at in terms of top line revenue, where we were looking to go, what the current, NRR, GRR numbers were. And, even then during COVID, we actually we did company all hands weekly, like town halls, and we would talk about, key topics like that. So people understood what the big mission and picture was. And then we each understood what our levers were that we could pull to help move that needle forward or pull the lever to move us forward. And then that's where also cross-functionally we had to be really aligned. So it was a really good learning for a lot of us. And again, there's no right answer. If you're a large company, those can be handled, with systems and tools and triggers and alerts, but nothing will ever replace that face to face. It could be on Zoom, but that human conversation with your colleagues is invaluable. And that has to happen. You have to carve out some time for that. Let's see other questions. We can talk about double comping and a few things like that too. We had some other anonymous questions. I think I'm going to say that we go through a couple more of these pieces, then we can touch on those
yeah.
anonymous questions that came in if that works. Okay, awesome. We talk a lot about today some of the philosophical things or the high level process things. But of course, when we think about things, it's people, process, and systems. So some of the tools behind the way to make these things happen, the tech that supports it, and things that can then address the people piece of it too, some of that tension that's felt. I don't know, Jeramee, if you want to touch on a few of these things, and I can jump in. But there's ways to defuse things. There's ways to have joint investment, so that way it's not just a sales tool that you're paying for and that my team's using, et cetera. There's a couple of ways to think about that stuff.
Yeah, I think just kind of like going through each of these, I think um, the kickoff, the formally handoff, but that whole process around, again, best practice, bringing the CSM in the pre-sales process so that you could start to capture that data. If you're using Salesforce or HubSpot, like getting all of that data in there so that feeds through, into ChurnZero and you can just continue to build on it. We made certain fields required. So we weren't even letting AEs wouldn't even get compensated until certain fields were populated. That's a little bit of a stick, but it's then it became natural. And so that was huge. Um, I hope everybody now at this point has some sort of call recording tool that you can see the entire customer in. So from first call with the BDR all the way through, being able to see all the meetings that are happening, who's involved, what's going on. That was massive for us. We were one of the first customers of Chorus at the time, and so that was just a fantastic tool that we implemented there. And again, I think everybody has that by now. Um, the QBRs, this was for those customers in the right size, the right segment. We really tried to enforce the QBRs. Sometimes they were ABRs, maybe annual business reviews. But um, but that was again reinforcing the pod concept. That was the whole team involved there. Maybe not so much the BDR in some cases, but definitely AE, SE, CSM, an advisory resource, working together, doing the prep, coming up with the goals, making sure we're reinforcing the value that our products delivering, and that the customer sees that. And then RevOps, this was again an evolution that we had. We at one point had sales ops reported into me, CS ops reported into Sabina. I think that we created a lot of awesome things when we rolled that up into a single organization. Again, kind of going back to those KPIs, making sure you know, my sales ops person and Sabina CS, ops person are not rolling up different numbers. And so I think that under one team was a great evolution.
Definitely agreed. I love that. All right, so we've had some good chat here and good questions. If you can put in chat, I'd love to hear or come off of mute and ask the question. But what's one change out of hearing these things today or things that have been on your mind already? What's the one thing that you could do tomorrow to start to drive expansion alignment between your teams? Right. So some examples could be even scheduling a one-on-one with your counterpart on the sales side. If you're not doing that today, as if you're CSM listening in today, maybe it's finding any AE if you don't have territory alignments or assignments there, maybe reaching out and saying, hey, would you be open to meeting monthly? Let's share stories that we're seeing and what's working, what's not working. If you're a leader and you're not already having that one-on-one time with your counterparts, suggest that you get that scheduled. We usually have that opportunity in cross-functional leadership meetings, but sometimes it's not the right forum for those more specific questions. Ben said a clear ROE doc. We don't have one today at our smaller startup. Yeah, get started. And there's a lot of tools and templates out there. There's things on each of our respective websites that are downloadable for free just to get you going, and happy to support that there too. Let's see, David, a joint NRR target. Focus on that in CS, but I don't think sales tracks this at all. And to Jeramee's point earlier, sometimes sales doesn't even know what NRR is. That's not necessarily their focus. And if people don't have an understanding of the economic mechanics of a true SaaS business, that it might be lost on them. Was there somebody coming off of mute to say something?
Oh, I don't think the attendees have that
Oh, okay.
functionality. They can just type in.
Got it.
But we could get to the rest of the questions. There were a few others that had come in. One question that was, are there any certain expansion opportunities that a CS manager would handle themselves without collaborating with an AE on that account? I mean, that might be like depend on the product they're selling, but I don't know if you guys can think of any scenarios where that might be allowed or, okay.
Yeah, definitely. There was definitely quite a few scenarios. I would say smaller segments. It was almost 100% on the CS.
Mhm.
As you get bigger, then it's you just got to be like in complete sync. Um, there's scenarios where you can run a true like here are my hold accounts. Here are the accounts that I as an AE maybe I've sold 50 total deals in my tenure, but I'm only focused on 10 of them from an expansion standpoint. And so those ones were really clear. I think this one, it really varies on the business, the product you're selling. What do you have additional product lines? Is it just pure users? So I think this one is hard to give here's the perfect answer on. But my recommendation is look at your segmentation, look at the products, look at your, how you expand, and you can have variations of it. And then just make sure it's really well documented, and and continuously reinforced. This isn't you can just do one, kick off and everybody's going to know and be really clear and follow all the rules.
One thing I've seen work well too is if you have to put parameters and boundaries around who does what, it could be the case that CSMs can autonomously run an expansion for something that's existing. So
Mhm.
maybe they have a certain license type and they're going to add more of that. But when it comes to selling a new product line, service line, or even maybe a new division outright, where it's going to be more or less a new sales motion with demos and workshopping to get to that point of launch, then that might be when then the AE comes in. So there's different scenarios that can serve different types of businesses there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Giving some guardrails and
Hmm.
um, yeah, we have another question that came in that says, how do you recommend addressing a sales team who often shares they don't have time for one-on-ones with CS teammates or time to enter information into Salesforce like fields, etc.? I think you're getting the vibe there of what they're saying.
Uh,
I'll be a little cheeky and say if you don't have time to put in the system, then we don't have time to review your comp payouts.
yeah, I mean, that's how
Yeah.
I would do it. I mean, we've had I've had plenty of those scenarios. And, um, I think this kind of goes into some of the comp pieces, but if you don't have if you're not putting in any time and you can't have an internal meeting and keep everybody in sync, well, then you're clearly not focused on it. If you're not focused on it, then you shouldn't be compensated on it. So,
Yeah,
um,
Ben said what I was thinking too, right? If it's not in the system, it didn't happen.
yeah.
Right?
And it's an old school way of
Yeah.
thinking, it really is, but data drives decisions. If we don't have the data, and I always tell my team, it's not Big Brother. When we launched Chorus, as Jeramee mentioned, to record calls, people were scared about that and they were reluctant. And it's like, look, this is help me help you. If I don't have the data that shows that you're overloaded, if I don't have the data that shows that you're fighting fires with competitor noise coming up on calls, then I can't help you. I need the data to show you. I can't whine about it. I need to be able to reconcile that information. So love that. All right, so just a quick recap here. We have literally 1 minute left. Just in summary, right? The concept of it, your customer sees you as one team, right? You are buying ChurnZero, right? And they're not going to be so focused on if it's sales or customer success or support. Our strategy to support our customers should be holistic. The ways to do that, right, is co-owning the customer, co-owning the revenue. And I even slipped up. I noticed I caught myself earlier on the call and I talked about, when I introduced myself, I said I owned renewals and expansions. Well, that's not entirely true. And there was no concept of true ownership. We have to have responsibilities from a RACI model, who does what, but we're really co-owning the outcomes. And that's the critical mind shift I think that we have to have. The plays need to be cohesive and they need to be sometimes even built from the bottom up. Bring in AEs and CSMs as a leadership team as you're designing what repeatable best in class motions look like. And it goes back to that data. It's because it worked and you have that and it's really incredible. I think you do get the slides. I'm not positive. Corey can.
Yes, we will be
Okay.
sharing those out.
Yes, awesome. And then the metrics that matter. So, it's right, having this mindset, having the motions in place, but then again, you got to be able to measure it. So that way you know if what you're doing is working, you know if it's moving the needle. And
The sky is falling.